At Eastern Bank, we believe that growing business should also grow the community. That's why we work to give all business owners what they need to take their dreams to the next level. Our dedication to small businesses and communities has inspired us to create the Equity Alliance for Business program and become the #1 SBA lender in Massachusetts for 15 years running. We're proud to be here for all businesses, big and small. See the good we can do for you by visiting easternbank.com/business.
This is what it sounds like.
Member FDIC.
In late 2007, the remains of a young woman from the Kaska Nation were discovered in the Yukon woods.
I always think about, I want to know what really happened.
So I travel north to try to understand what happened and who was involved.
It's a pretty big risk to come forward with the information that I have.
I'm David Ridgen, and this is Someone Knows Something, Season 8, The Angel Carlick Case. Available now.
Welcome to Say More from Boston Globe Opinion. Filling in for Shirley Leung this week, I'm Brian Bergstein, editor of the Globe's Ideas section. I'm back with another episode that aims to break down the hype about artificial intelligence. This time, we're talking about AI in the classroom. If you or someone you know has been in school in the last 15 years or so, then the voice of today's guest may sound familiar.
So the best way to cancel out a -3 is to add 3. So it cancels out to 0. So we're going to add 3 to the left. Let's add 3 to the right.
That's Sal Khan, the founder and CEO of Khan Academy. Khan Academy is the go-to site for free video lessons on just about any subject, from math to computer programming, even to art history. Sal's nonprofit has become a force in education, with thousands of videos in dozens of languages, plus interactive exercises and even SAT prep. Now, he has his sights on AI. He says it could give everyone a personal tutor. Thousands of students are already using Khan Academy's tutor chatbot, which is called Khanmigo. And I want to know more about how this could all work. Sal Khan, thank you for joining me on Say More.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
If you don't mind, walk us quickly through how you came to start Khan Academy. I think it's an interesting story that gets at the importance of tutoring, and there's a Boston angle to it, too.
Yes, it all started in Boston. It was 2004. I was a year out of business school at HBS. I had just gotten married in New Jersey, and my family from New Orleans, they came up to New Jersey for the wedding, and then they followed me back to Boston to hang out. It was actually July 4th weekend, which we all know is a great time in Boston. And it was just over conversation with my aunt that her daughter, my cousin, Nadia, who was 12 years old at the time, was having trouble with mathematics. So I talked to Nadia about it. It was unit conversion that she was having trouble with. I offered to tutor her when she went back home to New Orleans. She agreed. And long story short, it worked. And about 2 or 3 months later, I called up her school. I said, hey, I really think Nadia Rahman should be able to retake that placement exam from last year that had put her into a slower track. They said, who are you? I said, I'm her cousin. And they let her. And that same Nadia who was in a slow track was then put into an advanced track. And I was hooked. I started tutoring her younger brothers. And word spreads in my family, free tutoring is going on. And before I know it, there's 10, 15 cousins, family, friends. And just to help myself scale with this tutoring, the first Khan Academy, I started writing in 2005, which is the interactive exercises, because I saw a lot of my cousins had gaps in their knowledge and just needed more practice. 2006, a friend suggested I make YouTube videos to supplement the software I was writing. Those were the first videos. And then you fast forward to 2008, 2009, there were many people who were not my cousins who were using all of these resources, on the order of about 50 to 100,000 people per month at the time, which felt like a lot then. And so that's when, in 2008, I set it up as a nonprofit, mission-free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. Even then, I didn't think I was going to quit my hedge fund job. By this point, we had moved out to Northern California. 2009, I ended up quitting my day job because I couldn't focus on anything else. I was too excited about this project. And then that was a hard year. The philanthropic funding didn't come as fast as expected, but by 2010, we were off and running with real philanthropic support.
So now, I mean, the idea of what you do is completely accepted, so much so that teachers and schools wholeheartedly embrace it. And, you know, your model of what you do promotes this idea of a flipped classroom. And I'm wondering if you could describe, you know, how that works. What's the big idea there?
Yeah, it's interesting. The flipped classroom is this I guess in some ways, old idea that we've become very associated with. I gave a TED Talk back in 2011, and halfway through the TED Talk, I say halfway because this actually wasn't the big gist of the TED Talk, but I mentioned that teachers in these early days, 2007, 2008, when I had made all this content, they were starting to email me saying, hey, you gave a really good micro lesson on photosynthesis or on Newton's laws. I, as a biology or physics teacher, I now I'm assigning those lectures, those mini lectures as homework. And that way, when my kids come to class, they don't have to sit passively. We can do more problem solving. What used to be homework is now in the class. What used to be in the class, the lectures, are now at home. And there's huge benefits to it because now students could watch the lectures at their own time and pace, whatever they needed. My cousins famously told me they like me better on YouTube than in person because I think they enjoyed having me in their lives, but they enjoyed having it on demand. Right when they were having the question, if they wanted to speed it up, they could go to the next mini lesson. They could watch it at double speed. They could pause. They could repeat, things like that. But the whole TED Talk was almost like the intermediary step. Where I was really going with that TED Talk, I said, well, why stop there? Because what was really forcing every student to learn at the same pace was that lecture, was that one size fits all lecture. But as soon as you take the lecture out and you also have software, most of the resources of Khan Academy, we're very known for our videos, but most of the resources have been on the interactive personalized software side. And if students can come into the classroom and learn and do active learning at their own time and pace, and teachers get dashboards, then not only do you flip the classroom, but you can have a world where every student in a class of 30 is getting exactly what they need at exactly the right point. You don't have to move everyone lockstep.
So explain what Khanmigo is and how it's embodying your ideas of what tutoring should be, and tell us who's using it at the moment.
Yeah, and I go into a lot of depth on AI in education. I have a book coming out called Brave New Words, how AI will revolutionize education and why that's a good thing. But the story starts in summer of 2022. Sam Altman and Greg Brockman of OpenAI reach out to me and they say, hey, we're training our next gen model. I was skeptical at first. I had seen what GPT-2 and GPT-3 was capable of. It was very cool, but it didn't seem capable of really being able to parse knowledge or do anything like being a tutor. But when I saw what GPT-4 was capable of, albeit imperfectly, it was the first time that I said, wow, this ideal of being able to scale personalized tutoring might, we've been approximating it with videos and exercises and teacher tools, but we might be able to go a lot further now with AI. If the AI could start to walk students through a dialogue, if you can watch a video but still have your questions answered, if you could, the more we started thinking about it, our imagination started to run wild with what it could do. Now, it had some real issues, especially if you're talking about under 18 students. What about security, privacy? How do you keep a student from having a shady conversation with it? How do you keep them from using it to cheat, which has obviously been a big conversation. I have a whole chapter about that in Brave New Words. But we said, let's write all these risks down and turn them into features. And then I remember the day that ChatGPT came out. It was the last day of November 2022. And as we all know, one of the biggest headlines was, hey, this could be used for cheating. Schools started banning it. And I was really bummed. I was like, oh, this is, we're trying to do this the right way, special purpose for educators and students and districts. And now the baby's going to get thrown out with the bathwater. But you fast forward to March 15th of 2023, so a little over a year ago. And in some ways, it was a blessing that ChatGPT came out, because even by that point, a lot of educators had come full circle. They were saying, okay, ChatGPT isn't probably the right tool for the kids in our school because it can be used for cheating. But if only someone were to use the same technology and harness it for education, that could be a good thing. And so that when we launched Khanmigo, it has those guardrails. It is a ethical tutor. It is not a cheating tool. And it's not just in math. I mean, it definitely can support you as you're going through your traditional Khan Academy things, but we've introduced writing coach on it, so it can really support the students in writing. A whole element of it is actually as a teaching assistant for teachers, so helping save them on a lot of their workflows, writing lesson plans, grading papers, writing progress reports, etc.
So before we get into how it might help teachers, explain a little bit more about how it functions as a tutor versus a chatbot, that would just give answers. Like what What is the experience of using Khanmigo like?
Yeah, I'll try to give you like a verbal demo. If you were to go to say Chat GPT right now and paste in a algebra problem, it will just give you the steps to that problem, and it might not be accurate, but it's gotten better. If you were to go to Khanmigo and do the same thing, it will say, "Hey, I'm not here to give you the answer. What do you think the first step should be?" And let's say you make a mistake. Let's say you distribute a number incorrectly or something like that. Khanmigo wouldn't say, "Hey, no, this is how you should have done it." It'll say, "Oh, that's interesting. Why do you, does that, maybe you want to take a second look at that." So it really does, if you look at the chat interaction, it really feels almost identical to the types of, back in 2004, I used to use Yahoo Instant Messenger with my cousins. I was in Boston, they were in New Orleans. And I don't have copies of those chat transcripts back from 2004, but I think they'd be almost identical to the types of things that Khanmigo now does with students. And in fact, a lot of the tone and stuff is very similar to my tone and how I would also try to tutor someone if I were doing it live. And then there's a whole bunch of, you could, obviously, if you're doing exercises on Khan Academy, it knows what you're working on. And so it can tutor you based on that. If you're watching videos, answer questions based on that. And then there's a whole series of activities that we realized transcend traditional tutoring. There's activities where students can talk to simulations of literary characters or historical figures on the platform, where they can write a story with the AI, but not by the AI, where it can act as a career or almost like a life coach for students, helping them deal with focus or stress or procrastination. And we're adding new stuff almost every day.
What other guardrails did you have to build in to make it an effective tutor?
All of the conversations, at least for under 18 users, are stored. And if a teacher or parent wants to see those conversations, they can. That's also useful because we report back to parents and teachers summaries of what individual students have been doing or what a class as a whole has been doing. If a student has a conversation with the AI that feels off, if they say, I feel like hurting myself or something like that, the AI will immediately say, "Hey, this isn't an appropriate conversation for us to have." And it'll actually notify parents, teachers, and administrators now. We have administrator dashboards so that they can find out about it. On top of that, we have a lot of layers to try to minimize, and I won't say fix because it's not perfect yet, to minimize a lot of the rough spots of generative AI. But it still can make math errors. It still can make up facts. But you can imagine when it is anchored on the Khan Academy content, which has been vetted and is accurate, it gets that much more accurate.
So, okay, you've had this out there in test groups for about a year or so. I mean, I'm just curious, what surprised you about the way kids are using it? Or, what have you learned?
There's about 10 to 15% of students that, and even going pretty young, let's say mid-elementary, late elementary school aged, that immediately understand what this is. And they know how to ask the questions. It does unlock them in a certain way. But that still leaves about 80, 85, 90% of students who are like, what do I do with this? How do I ask questions? And I've observed some classrooms, and I've talked to teachers about this. And a lot of the teachers say, look, this isn't a unique to AI problem. A lot of these students, especially as you get a little bit younger, they have trouble asking me, the teacher, questions. They have trouble articulating exactly what they need. So there's kind of a double... They're on both sides. What we're working on the Khan Academy side is a whole series of projects, which will probably never be done with, called Proactive Khanmigo. We realize that a great tutor doesn't just wait to be asked for help. A great tutor is proactive. This is what I was doing back with Nadia back in 2004, where right when they're about to, let's say they're about to type in the wrong answer onto Khan Academy, it can say, "Hey, hold on a second. You want to talk to me about this before you do it?" You can imagine it eventually messaging students. It's like, "Hey, you said you and I set this goal together, but you haven't touched your work for the past 3 days. Come on, let's do this together." It'll message parents, teachers, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of other things we're going to be able to do there. On top of that, we're trying to make sure that teachers are well prepared to do this. So we do a lot of professional development with the districts that we are formally working with. But on the bright side, we've seen a lot of teachers. There's a school district out here in California where their head of technology estimates that this is going to save their teachers about 5 hours a week per teacher, which is a massive benefit, and especially in a time where teachers are very stretched thin. And there's a lot of attrition and there's a lot of recruiting issues with teachers, to say, hey, here's a tool for you. It's going to make you more productive, save time for you and for your students. We're seeing teachers and humanities teachers, they're doing a lesson on the Underground Railroad. Hey, students, today's special guest is Harriet Tubman. And the AI simulation of Harriet Tubman shows up on the overhead projector, and the students are able to have an interesting conversation. So we definitely are seeing some very cool things that I would have only expected to see in the Star Trek universe, but it's already happening in real classrooms.
More of my conversation with Sal Khan after this short break.
At Eastern Bank, we believe in good business. That's why we provide clients with a suite of products and services made to take their businesses to the next level. From express business loans to seamless cash management solutions, we make it easy to grow when the time is right. As a trusted full-service bank and the #1 SBA lender in Massachusetts for 15 years running, we understand what you need to keep your business thriving. See the good we can do for you by visiting easternbank.com/business.
This is what it sounds like.
Member FDIC.
So I have to admit to you that I also was in the pessimist camp, when ChatGPT first came on the scene, and there was all of this hand-wringing about what it will mean for education. I think it's partly because of the way ChatGPT's own creators were talking about it. It can do writing for you. It can serve as some kind of oracle with all the answers. The message that was coming across, a year and a half ago was AI offers shortcuts. That was sort of the message. And that sounded like just dreadful for education. We don't need more shortcuts, right? But then after thinking more about this and also reading up on what you're doing with Khanmigo, I actually have come around to thinking that a disruption to the status quo in education is more likely to be good than bad, largely because, the state of education honestly doesn't really seem that good, especially since the pandemic. I mean, I don't know that good writing and critical thinking are exactly flourishing in high schools or even colleges right now. I just wonder if you agree with that. If you feel like even before the pandemic, the status quo was in need of a shakeup.
I agree. I won't say who it was, but I spoke to a senior official at Harvard not too long ago, and they were mentioning how even at Harvard, a lot of their freshmen can't write, which is shocking. These are kids with obviously amazing academic qualifications and amazing SAT scores and whatnot else and extracurriculars. And if they're not able to write as you'd expect a college freshman to be able to write, what does it say about the other 99.99% of students out there? I think what has happened is traditional assessment has, because you could only scalably assess things like multiple choice reading comprehension passages or multiple choice grammar questions in the humanities, a lot of the education system became very anchored in optimizing for that. And most standardized assessments don't measure your writing. And so people became less indexed on that, and probably less writing has been going on in the K-12 system. There's a similar thing that's well before AI happened on the math side as well. Most kids going to, say, a community college, 70-80% of them, they don't even place into college algebra, which is essentially 10th grade math, 9th or 10th grade math. They're placing into remedial math, which is essentially 6th or 7th grade math. So they're sitting in high school for years, middle school and high school, taking all these classes, and they're not learning it.
What do you say if parents worry that their kids already have too much screen time and this is just, going to kind of bring about more of it?
So I think, like all things, what matters, you do it in moderation. And when you do it, you're doing a productive version of it versus an unproductive version of it. So even before AI, what does good screen time look like? Well, it could be writing a paper. It could be working on your Khan Academy. It could be writing some computer code. It could be designing something or editing video footage, being a producer or learning things. But even for those good activities, depending on the age, I would say, you want to make sure that students are still getting a lot of in-person interaction. They're going outside, they're socializing, etc. The important things in life are not being squeezed out. The socialization, the interaction. No one else is around, and you're able to have a 30-minute conversation with an AI. I just had one personally. I wanted to understand supernovas better. Supernovae. I don't know if I'm pluralizing it right.
I never know that either. Yeah.
And I had a great 30-minute session with Khanmigo, and I think all of, especially as adults, as we learn to self-regulate better, we all have a sense of like, okay, how did I spend the last 30 minutes? And do I feel good about how I spent the last 30 minutes? If I'm like on like TikTok or Instagram and I'm just scrolling for 30 minutes, I don't feel good about myself. I feel like, what did I just do? Like, wow, I was just in some kind of a haze. But when I spent that 30 minutes having a conversation with Khanmigo where I'm like, why does a supernova explode? You would think it would collapse. And then it's like, well, how does a supernova work? I was like, well, the fusion stops. So you would think that the star would just collapse. And then it's telling me, well, do you think it collapsed quickly or slowly? And I'm like, well, probably quickly. And it's like, well, have you ever seen something collapse quickly without bouncing? And I'm like, oh, are you telling me it collapses and then it bounces and the outer atmosphere of the star gets, jettisoned off into space? And they're like, exactly. And I'm like, wow, that was a great 20 minutes I just had. That felt like I was, at a university seminar. I don't feel like I was in some kind of social media haze. So I think we, once again, even in person, you could be hanging out with friends and having a great social experience, or you could be hanging out with friends and being bullied and feeling insecure, and getting into bad habits. They're not equivalent.
I want to understand a little bit more the personalization baked into Khanmigo. How different would any one kid's experience of using it be from another? You've mentioned something about the tutor can say something like, hey, I remember one of your goals is to, do this, and you haven't done that in a while. So what's the sort of like range of flexibility that this personalization creates?
Yeah, as once again, our true north is what makes a great tutor. And a great tutor, once again, is not just answering the questions in the moment. It has memory. It knows what you've done in the past. It knows your interests. It knows what motivates you. It knows how you want to be spoken to. Like if you tell Khanmigo, let's say you're watching a video on Khan Academy and you're like, why do I need to learn this? Which age-old question. Khanmigo, if this was the first time you say that, Khanmigo will probably say something like, well, what do you care about? And let's say I say, well, I'm really into, finance. I want to become a hedge fund analyst one day. Khanmigo's like, okay, well, this is how, if you want to become a hedge fund analyst, you're probably going to have to look at biotech stocks. So it's really important for you to understand this video about DNA. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to. But even as it does that, it actually keeps what we call our insights. So it's going to keep a little note to itself. Is like, okay, my current understanding is Sal likes investing, or Sal wants to become a hedge fund analyst. Or if I'm a teacher and I tell Khanmigo, yeah, I'm a 9th grade biology teacher, I want a lesson plan on photosynthesis, Khanmigo will keep notes so that the second time you come, they'll say, okay, do you want another lesson on photosynthesis, or do you want to move on to respiration right now? So we're remembering these things. But my daughter, I thought it was a joke. She wants Khanmigo to speak to her in Gen Z slang. It kind of works for her. And it then remembers that. But at the same time, we think it's very important for students to, and users, teachers as well, to have very clear understanding of what notes the AI is taking on them. So we do have a setting where you can go and you can see all of the notes that the AI has taken on you, and you can delete them, you can reset them, you can say, no, I don't want to be a hedge fund analyst anymore. I want to be a YouTube education video creator. And it'll modify its understanding of you. And to be clear, because data is a very sensitive issue, as you can imagine, none of that is used to train the underlying models. In fact, none of the interactions we have, period, are being used to train the underlying models. That all sits at the Khan Academy side of things, and users have full control and transparency over it.
So, are there ways where a digital tutor is better than a human tutor?
For the most part right now, a human tutor, I'd say a good human tutor. There could be bad human tutors that will make the student cry and that will, make them give up on their education aspirations. But a good human tutor is for sure still the gold standard. But even the current state of, say, Khanmigo, it has some of the same reason why my cousins told me in 2006 that they liked my YouTube videos better than me in person. Once again, I don't think they were trying to insult me, but they liked the fact that it was on demand. It was when they needed it. If they were an algebra student and they forgot how to divide decimals, they didn't have to feel embarrassed about it. those same properties are now true with an AI tutor. And the AI tutor actually can go much more nuanced and much deeper and answer any question that they might have. And so, obviously the cost is much lower. Anytime these days, tutors, a strong tutor might cost $50, $100 an hour plus in certain parts of the world, in Boston or in the Bay Area. I'd be very sensitive about their time. You don't want to, and then it's another human being. You don't want them to think you're not smart, even if you have some, even in the workplace, people are afraid to ask questions because like, oh, how will people perceive me? Well, with the AI, there's less stigma there. It's infinitely patient. It's always there in the middle of the night. You could give it a lot of information and it can process it really, really fast. So I think that's where the AI already has an edge. I think the AI has an edge in doing some of this simulation-based stuff. Like, hey, I'm going to be Eeyore the donkey now. Let's have a conversation. Let's play a game. And then I think over the next 2 to 5 years, as the AI gets better at memory, we already have, you can already talk to Khanmigo. It has text to speech and speech to text, but it's going to get better at that. I think in the 3 to 5 year time frame, you're going to be able to have a Zoom conversation or a video conference conversation with your AI tutor. In the 5 to 10 year time frame, you maybe put on your Vision Pro or your Oculus, and your tutor, or actually your AI tutor, appears in the room with you. So like, this is real Star Trek holodeck talk that I'm talking, but I'm talking in the next 5-10 years. That'll be interesting. I think if it has enough memory, etc., it might get close in certain ways.
All right, well, Sal Khan is founder and CEO of Khan Academy. His upcoming book is called Brave New Words. Thank you for joining me on Say More to talk about AI in the classroom.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Say More is a production of the Boston Globe. Today's episode was produced by Anna Kusmer with help from Scott Hellman. Our editor is Jin Dow. Our engineer is Uzair Ahmed. Our music is from APM Music. If you like the show, please follow us and leave us a review on Apple, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us at saymore@globe.com. I'm Brian Bergstein. Thanks for listening.